The night baker before dawn. The town sleeps. In the hours when darkness holds everything close and still, when curtains are drawn and doors are locked, and the streets lie empty beneath a sky scattered with stars, the town sleeps. There is no movement in the square. There is no sound from the houses that line the narrow lanes, their windows dark, their chimneys quiet. The air is cool and motionless, carrying the faint scent of earth and distant trees, of gardens settling into the deepest part of night. And in this stillness, in this hushed and gentle darkness, a single light appears. It is small at first, a warm glow behind a window, a soft illumination that spills onto the cobblestones of a corner street, touching the edges of the old stones with gold. The light does not flicker or flash. It simply is, steady, patient, welcoming in the quiet. The bakery stands on a corner where two lanes meet, its front made of old brick worn smooth by decades of weather and touch. The door is wooden, painted a deep blue that looks almost black in the darkness, and above it hangs a simple sign, unlit now, bearing faded letters that spell out a name long familiar to everyone who lives nearby. The windows are tall and narrow, their glass thick and slightly uneven, the kind that holds bubbles and imperfections from another time. During the day, these windows show shelves lined with bread and pastries, but now, in the deep night, they show only the reflection of lamplight from within. The baker stands just inside the doorway. He has unlocked the door moments ago, turning the heavy iron key in the lock with a soft click that seemed loud in the surrounding silence. Now he stands still, one hand resting on the doorframe, looking out at the street. He does not hurry. There is no need. The night is long, and the work ahead unfolds at its own pace, unhurried and familiar. He is dressed simply, worn trousers, a shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, an apron tied at his waist, its fabric soft from countless washings. His hands are strong and broad, dusted faintly with flour that never quite disappears, no matter how often they are washed. His face is calm, lined gently by years of early mornings and late nights, by the rhythm of seasons and the quiet satisfaction of work done well. For a moment, he simply breathes. The air outside is cool against his face. It carries with it the particular quality of night air, clean, still, untouched by the warmth of sun or the movement of people. It smells faintly of stone and sleeping gardens, of dew beginning to form on grass, of the distant hills that rise beyond the edge of town. He breathes it in slowly, feeling his chest expand and release, feeling the quietness of the hour settle around him like a familiar cloak. Then, with the gentlest of movements, he steps back inside and closes the door. The latch clicks softly. The street is shut out. The bakery becomes a world of its own. Inside, the darkness is not complete. A single oil lamp burns on a small table near the door, its flame steady behind curved glass. The light it gives is warm and golden, casting soft shadows that pool in corners and gather beneath the heavy wooden counter that runs along one wall. Everything is still. Everything is waiting. The baker moves slowly through the front room. His footsteps are quiet on the worn floorboards, each step producing a soft creak that seems less like a sound and more like a voice, a gentle greeting from wood that has known these footsteps every night for longer than memory serves. The boards are smooth and dark with age, swept clean, their grain visible in the lamplight like the rings of ancient trees. They speak of patience. They speak of time passing in measures too slow to notice, yet always moving forward. He pauses at the counter, resting his hand on its surface. The wood is cool beneath his palm, solid and reassuring. This counter has held countless loaves, countless mornings of bread still warm from the oven, countless exchanges of coin and greeting and quiet conversation. But now it is empty, clean, ready for the work that will soon begin. The baker lifts the oil lamp from its table. The flame sways slightly with the movement, sending shadows dancing across the walls, but it does not flicker out. He carries it slowly through a doorway at the back of the front room, ducking slightly beneath the low frame, and enters the heart of the bakery, the kitchen where all the work is done. Here, the darkness is deeper. The kitchen is larger than the front room, but feels smaller because of everything it contains. There are shelves along the walls, stacked with bowls and measuring cups and wooden spoons worn smooth with use. There are sacks of flour leaning against one wall, their cloth sides plump and dusty, tied at the top with rough twine. There is a long wooden table in the center of the room, its surface marked and scarred by years of kneading and rolling and cutting, its edges rounded by countless brushings of hands and arms. And against the far wall, massive and dark, stands the oven. The baker sets the lamp on the central table. Its light spreads outward, pushing back the darkness, revealing the familiar shapes and surfaces that he knows as well as his own hands. He stands for a moment, looking around, letting his eyes adjust, letting the space settle into familiarity. There is a particular quality to this room at this hour, a sense of potential, of readiness, of work about to begin but not yet begun. Everything is in its place. Everything is clean and waiting. The air is cool and still, holding the faint scent of flour and yeast, of wood and stone and old brick. He moves to the shelves and begins lighting more lamps. One by one, he lifts small oil lamps from their places and uses the flame from the first lamp to light them. Each new flame catches with a soft sound, almost like breath, and each new pool of light spreads across the surfaces around it. The room grows brighter, but not harsh, never harsh. The light remains warm and golden, soft at the edges, filling the space with a glow that feels almost alive, almost companionable. When all the lamps are lit, the kitchen is transformed. Shadows still gather in the corners and beneath the shelves, but the central spaces are illuminated, welcoming, ready. The wooden table gleams softly. The flour sacks seem to glow with their own pale light. The oven, still cold and dark, waits with patient presence against the far wall. The baker removes his coat from a hook near the door and hangs it carefully. He adjusts his apron, tying it more securely, smoothing the fabric with his palms. These small gestures are part of the ritual, part of the gentle transition from the sleeping world outside to the quiet world of work within. Each movement is deliberate, but not hurried. Each action has its place in the sequence of the night. Now he turns his attention to the oven. It is a large brick structure, built into the wall itself, its mouth wide and deep, its interior invisible in shadow. The bricks are old, their surface darkened by decades of heat and smoke, their edges worn smooth. During the day, when the oven is fired and working, these bricks radiate warmth that fills the entire bakery, that spreads out into the front room and even into the street beyond. But now, in the deep night, the oven is cold. The bricks hold no heat. The air around it is cool and still. The baker kneels before the oven. His movements are slow and practiced. He reaches into a wooden box beside the oven and removes kindling, small sticks and twists of paper, dry bark and thin strips of wood. He arranges these carefully inside the oven's mouth, building a small structure that will catch fire easily and burn steadily. His hands move with the certainty of long habit. He does not think about what he is doing. His body knows. When the kindling is arranged, he strikes a match. The sound is sharp in the quiet, a brief scratch, a hiss, and then a small flame blooms at the end of the matchstick, bright and alive. He holds it carefully, protecting it from any stray draft, and touches it to the paper at the base of the kindling. The flame catches. It spreads along the paper, curling and blackening it, then reaches the thin sticks above. Wood begins to crackle softly. Smoke rises, thin and gray, carrying the clean scent of burning wood. The baker watches. He stays kneeling, watching the small fire grow. There is something deeply satisfying about this moment, the transition from darkness to light, from cold to warmth, from stillness to gentle activity. The flames flicker and dance, casting moving shadows across his face and hands. The crackling grows slightly louder. Small pops and snaps announce wood splitting in the heat, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, warmth begins to radiate from the oven's mouth. He adds larger pieces of wood. Not all at once. Slowly. One piece, then another, allowing each to catch before adding the next. The fire needs time to establish itself, time to grow strong enough to sustain the heat that will be needed later. Rushing accomplishes nothing. Patience is everything. The flames grow taller. The crackling deepens. The smoke thins to almost nothing as the fire burns cleaner and hotter. And the warmth begins to spread outward from the oven, touching the baker's face and hands, pushing gently against the coolness of the surrounding air. He stands slowly, his knees releasing a soft pop, and steps back to regard his work. The fire is well established now. It will need more wood soon, but not yet. For now it burns steadily, filling the oven's mouth with flickering orange light, sending warmth out into the kitchen. The baker can feel the temperature beginning to change around him, can feel the cool stillness of the night air beginning to give way to something warmer, more welcoming. He turns away from the oven and moves to the central table. His hands rest on its surface for a moment, feeling the smooth wood beneath his palms. This table has been the center of his work for more years than he can count. It has felt the pressure of countless pounds of dough, has been dusted with countless handfuls of flour, has been scrubbed clean countless times and then used again. Its surface is no longer perfectly flat. There are dips and worn places where work has been done most often, where hands have pressed and kneaded day after day, year after year. But these imperfections do not detract. If anything, they add to the table's character, speaking of use and purpose and time passing in the best of ways. The baker begins to gather what he needs. He moves without haste, collecting items from shelves and hooks and corners of the room. A large ceramic bowl, its sides high and rounded, its interior smooth and cream-colored. A wooden spoon with a long handle, its edge worn thin from stirring. A small copper cup for measuring. A tin container of salt, its lid fitting snugly. A stone jar of yeast, its contents cool and dormant, waiting to wake. Each item is placed on the table with care. There is no clattering, no rushing. Each object finds its place in an arrangement that has been repeated so many times it requires no thought. The bowl in the center. The measuring cup beside it. The spoon within easy reach. The salt and yeast nearby, ready when needed. And then the flour. The baker moves to one of the large sacks leaning against the wall. It is made of rough cloth, tied at the top with twine, and it is heavy, 50 pounds of flour, milled from wheat grown in fields beyond the town, ground between stones that turn with patient, endless rotation. He loosens the twine and folds back the top of the sack, revealing the flour within, pale, soft, fine as powder, holding the faint sweet scent of grain and earth. He dips a smaller container into the sack and scoops flour out carefully, holding it over the sack as he carries it to the table, so that any excess falls back into the sack rather than onto the floor. The flour whispers as it moves, a sound so soft it is almost not a sound at all, more like the memory of sound, like sand shifting or snow settling. At the table, he begins to measure. The copper cup is filled with flour, then scraped level with the flat edge of a wooden stick. The flour is tipped into the large bowl. The action is repeated. Again and again. Each movement is identical. Each measure is the same. There is a rhythm to it, scoop, level, pour, a rhythm that becomes almost like breathing, natural and unforced. The pile of flour in the bowl grows slowly. It forms a small white mountain, soft and fine, its surface holding the marks of each addition like snow holding footprints. The baker does not count. He does not need to. His hands know the weight, his eyes know the volume. When enough flour has been added, he simply stops, setting down the measuring cup with a soft sound. Now he needs water. There is a bucket near the door, filled earlier in the evening from the well in the courtyard behind the bakery. The water is cool and clean, settling quietly in the wooden bucket, its surface smooth and dark in the lamplight. The baker dips a smaller jar into the bucket and fills it, watching the water rise, hearing the soft gurgle as air escapes. He carries the jar of water to the table and sets it down beside the bowl of flour. For a moment, he simply stands there, looking at the ingredients before him. Flour and water. Salt and yeast. The simplest of things. The most basic of elements. And yet from these simple components, something wonderful will emerge. Something nourishing and warm and essential. Something that has sustained people for thousands of years, in every corner of the world, in every time and season. The baker reaches for the salt. He measures a small amount into his palm, feeling the crystals rough against his skin, seeing them catch the lamplight like tiny stars. He tips his hand over the bowl and lets the salt fall onto the flour, scattering across the white surface, disappearing into it. Then the yeast. He opens the stone jar and measures a portion into his palm. The yeast is dry and granular, pale brown, holding within it the dormant potential for transformation. He adds it to the bowl, watching it settle into the flour, mixing with the salt, waiting to wake when water is added. The baker picks up the wooden spoon. He uses it to stir the dry ingredients together, turning them gently, mixing the flour and salt and yeast into one uniform substance. The spoon moves slowly through the bowl. There is no urgency. The ingredients will mix in their own time. The baker simply guides them, turning and folding, letting the motion become meditative, letting the repetition quiet his mind. When the dry ingredients are well mixed, he sets down the spoon and picks up the jar of water. He pours slowly. The water falls in a thin stream onto the flour, darkening it where it touches, beginning the process of transformation. The baker pours with one hand and uses the other to begin mixing, his fingers spreading through the flour, breaking up clumps, encouraging the water to spread evenly throughout. The flour begins to absorb the water, begins to change from powder to something heavier, thicker, more cohesive. He adds more water, a little at a time. The dough begins to form. At first it is rough and shaggy, barely holding together, more like a collection of wet clumps than a unified mass. But as the baker continues to mix, continues to fold and press and turn, the clumps begin to join. The dough begins to come together. What was separate becomes one. His hands work slowly, steadily. There is flour on his fingers, on his palms, dusting his forearms. There is dough beginning to gather beneath his nails. But he does not stop to wipe his hands or brush away the flour. These are simply the signs of work beginning, the marks of engagement with the task at hand. They are familiar. They are right. The dough is still quite sticky. It clings to his fingers as he works it, stretching in thin strands when he pulls his hands away. More time is needed. More working. The gluten must develop, the proteins must align, the water must fully hydrate the flour. This cannot be rushed. This happens in its own time. The baker continues to fold and press, fold and press. His movements are rhythmic and calm. There is no strain in his face, no tension in his shoulders. This is not work that requires force or speed. This is work that requires patience and presence, attention and care. The dough will tell him when it is ready. Until then, he simply continues. Gradually, the character of the dough begins to change. It becomes less sticky. It becomes smoother. When the baker presses his thumb into it, the dough springs back slightly, showing the first signs of elasticity. The separate clumps have fully joined now, forming a cohesive mass that moves as one when he turns it, that holds its shape when he lifts his hands away. The baker sprinkles a little flour on the table. Just a small handful, spread across the wooden surface where he will work. Then he tips the bowl, and the dough slides out onto the floured table with a soft sound, settling into a rounded heap. Now begins the kneading. The baker places his hands on the dough. His palms press down gently, feeling the cool, smooth surface, feeling the weight and density of the mass before him. It is still quite soft, yielding easily under pressure, but there is already a subtle resistance, a slight pushback that was not there moments ago when the ingredients first came together. This is good. This is as it should be. He begins to knead with slow, deliberate movements. The motion is simple, repeated endlessly. Press forward with the heels of both hands, pushing the dough away across the table. Fold the far edge back toward himself. Turn the mass a quarter rotation. Press forward again. Fold back. Turn. Press. Fold. Turn. There is a rhythm to it that requires no thought. The baker's body knows this rhythm the way it knows breathing, the way it knows the beating of his own heart. His hands move of their own accord, guided by years of repetition, by muscle memory built through countless nights exactly like this one. He does not count the motions. He does not watch the clock. He simply continues, letting the work unfold at its own pace. The dough begins to change beneath his hands. At first, it remains quite sticky, clinging to the table, clinging to his palms. Small amounts of flour must be added occasionally, sprinkled onto the table or dusted onto the dough's surface, just enough to prevent sticking, but not so much that the dough becomes dry or stiff. The baker's judgment in this is instinctive. He does not measure the flour he adds. He feels when it is needed and adds only what is required. Press. Fold. Turn. The motion continues, steady and unchanging. The baker's breathing falls into rhythm with his movements, exhaling as he presses forward, inhaling as he folds back. It becomes a kind of meditation, a quiet partnership between breath and body and dough. Thoughts that might have cluttered his mind earlier in the evening begin to drift away, released by the repetitive motion, dissolved by the simple focus required by the work. Press. Fold. Turn. The lamplight flickers very slightly, responding to some small current of air too subtle to feel. The shadows shift and return. The warm glow continues to illuminate the table, the dough, the baker's hands as they work. Beyond the circle of lamplight, the kitchen remains in gentle shadow, peaceful and still. The oven crackles softly behind him. The fire is burning well now, settled into its work, consuming the wood with steady appetite. The baker can feel the warmth spreading across his back, contrasting with the cooler air in front of him. It is a pleasant sensation, this warmth, comforting without being oppressive. Later, much later, when the oven is fully heated and radiating its strongest warmth, the kitchen will become quite hot. But for now, in these early hours, the temperature is perfect, cool enough to work comfortably, warm enough to dispel the chill of the deep night. Press. Fold. Turn. The dough is becoming smoother. Where it was rough and slightly grainy in texture, it is now developing a silkiness, a uniformity that comes only with proper kneading. The surface, when the baker lifts his hands away for a moment, shows a gentle sheen in the lamplight. It no longer sticks to the table or to his palms. It has absorbed the water fully, and the gluten strands within it have begun to align and strengthen, creating the structure that will allow the dough to rise, to expand, to hold the air that the yeast will produce. The baker continues without pause. His arms are strong from years of this work, and the motion does not tire him. If anything, there is something restful about it, something that allows his body to work while his mind rests. His shoulders rise and fall with each press and fold. His weight shifts slightly from foot to foot. His hands, dusted white with flour, move with patient certainty. Press. Fold. Turn. Time passes, though it is impossible to say how much. There are no clocks in the kitchen, no way to mark the minutes except by the progress of the work itself, by the changing character of the dough, by the growing warmth from the oven, by the slow, almost imperceptible shift in the quality of the darkness outside the windows. Time here is measured differently than in the waking world. It moves more slowly, or perhaps more truly, not broken into anxious segments but flowing like water, like breath, continuous and calm. The dough is ready. The baker knows this not by any single sign, but by the accumulation of many small indicators that his hands and eyes have learned to read. The texture is right, smooth and elastic, neither too firm nor too soft. The surface springs back when pressed, showing that the gluten has developed properly. The dough no longer resists his handling, but moves cooperatively, almost willingly, forming and reforming as he shapes it. He gathers the dough into a round mass. His hands cup it gently, tucking the edges underneath, creating a smooth, taut surface on top. The motion is quick and practiced. A few deft movements and the rough-shaped mass becomes a neat sphere, sitting on the floured table, holding its shape complete. The baker dusts his hands together, sending a small cloud of flour into the air, where it hangs for a moment in the lamplight before settling slowly back to the table. He brushes his palms against his apron, leaving white streaks on the fabric that join countless other such marks, the accumulated evidence of many nights of work. Now the dough must rest. The baker moves to a shelf and retrieves a large ceramic bowl, wider and shallower than the one he used for mixing. He wipes the inside of the bowl with a cloth that has been dampened with oil, leaving a thin coating that will prevent the dough from sticking. The oil catches the light, glistening faintly. He carries the bowl to the table and carefully lifts the dough, placing it inside. The dough settles into the bowl with a soft sound, its round shape conforming slightly to the curved interior. The baker covers the bowl with a clean cloth, draping it gently over the top, tucking the edges around the bowl's rim. The cloth is woven from linen, soft and worn, and it falls over the dough like a blanket, creating a protected space where the dough can rest undisturbed. The bowl is placed on a shelf near the oven. Not too close, the heat should be gentle, encouraging, not harsh. Just near enough that the warmth reaches the dough, creating the ideal environment for the yeast to wake and begin its slow work of fermentation. Here, in the warmth and darkness beneath the cloth, the yeast will consume the sugars in the flour and produce carbon dioxide, tiny bubbles of gas that will become trapped in the gluten structure, causing the dough to expand, to rise, to transform. But this transformation takes time. The dough cannot be hurried. It will rise at its own pace, according to its own nature, responding to the warmth and the yeast and the mysterious alchemy that turns flour and water into bread. The baker's task now is simply to wait. He turns back to the table and begins to clean. A brush with soft bristles sweeps the scattered flour into a small pile. The flour is gathered into his cupped palm and deposited back into the storage sack. Nothing is wasted. The table is wiped with a damp cloth, removing any bits of dough that have stuck to the wood, any streaks of moisture left behind. The bowl that held the dry ingredients is taken to a basin of water and washed clean, then set aside to dry. These small tasks of cleaning are performed with the same care and attention as the mixing and kneading. Everything in its place. Everything tended to properly. The bakery is not just a place of production but a place of order, of respect for the tools and the space and the work itself. When the table is clean and the tools are put away, the baker pauses. He stands in the center of the kitchen, hands resting loosely at his sides, and simply exists in the space for a moment. The fire crackles softly in the oven. The lamps burn steadily on their shelves and hooks. The covered bowl sits quietly near the warmth, its contents invisible but present, beginning the slow process of rising. Everything is as it should be. The baker moves to the oven and adds more wood to the fire. He selects pieces carefully, not too large, not too small. The fire has moved past its initial stages and now requires larger fuel to maintain its heat. He places the wood pieces into the oven's mouth, arranging them so that air can circulate, so that the flames can reach all surfaces. The fire accepts the new wood with a brief flurry of sparks and a deepening of its crackling voice. The heat radiating from the oven is stronger now. The baker can feel it clearly when he stands close, can feel the warmth pressing against his face and chest, can see the air itself shimmering slightly where it rises from the oven's mouth. The bricks are beginning to absorb the heat, to store it in their dense mass. This stored heat is essential. It is what will bake the bread later, radiating steadily from all sides, creating the even temperature that produces a perfect loaf. But the oven is not ready yet. Not nearly. It will take hours of steady burning before the bricks are saturated with heat, before the temperature inside the oven is high enough and stable enough for baking. This is patient work. This is work that cannot be forced or shortened. The fire must simply burn, and the heat must simply accumulate, and time must simply pass. The baker closes the oven's iron door most of the way, leaving just a small gap for air to enter and feed the fire. The door is heavy, made of iron that has been forged and fitted by a blacksmith long ago, and it moves on hinges that are kept oiled and functional. When it is closed, or nearly closed, the heat is contained better, the temperature rises more efficiently. The oven becomes a sealed world of heat and flame, doing its work in patient darkness. The baker steps back and regards his work. The fire is established. The dough is set to rise. The next phase of work is some time away. For now, there is nothing to do but wait and tend the fire and allow the slow processes to unfold. He moves to a small stool in the corner of the kitchen and sits down. The stool is simple, 3 legs and a round wooden seat, worn smooth by use. It is placed where the baker can see the oven and the shelf where the dough rests, where he can monitor both without having to rise. He settles onto the stool with a soft exhalation, feeling his weight sink down, feeling his muscles relax slightly after the work of kneading. The kitchen is filled with warmth and lamplight and the gentle sounds of the fire. Outside, beyond the walls, the town still sleeps. The streets are empty. The houses are dark. The night holds everything in its deep, quiet embrace. But here, in the bakery, there is warmth and light and the beginning of work. Here, the day is already being prepared, hours before anyone else will wake to meet it. The baker sits quietly, his hands resting on his knees. He does not read. He does not busy himself with other tasks. He simply sits, existing in the present moment, aware of the warmth spreading through the room, aware of the fire crackling steadily, aware of his own breathing and the gentle beating of his heart. This is part of the work too, this stillness, this presence, this willingness to wait without impatience. His gaze rests on the covered bowl. Beneath the cloth, invisible but certain, the dough is changing. The yeast, warmed by the heat from the oven, is waking from its dormancy. Each microscopic cell is beginning to feed on the sugars present in the flour, beginning to reproduce, beginning to release carbon dioxide. These processes are happening too slowly to see, too quietly to hear, but they are happening nonetheless. The dough is coming alive in its own way, swelling infinitesimally, beginning the expansion that will eventually double its size. The baker knows all of this without needing to lift the cloth and look. He has seen it countless times. He knows the pace of it, the rhythm of it. He knows that if he were to check now, too soon, he would see little change. The dough would still look much as it did when he placed it in the bowl, a smooth, rounded mass, barely affected by the yeast's early work. Patience is required. Trust is required. The dough will rise when it is ready, not before. Minutes pass in silence. The only sounds are the small, comfortable sounds of the bakery itself, the soft crackling and occasional pop from the oven, the faint creaking of settling wood, the barely audible hiss of the oil lamps, the whisper of the baker's own breathing. These sounds do not disturb the quiet. If anything, they deepen it, the way the sound of rain can deepen the silence of a room, or the way the distant call of a night bird can emphasize the stillness of the air. The baker's eyes move slowly around the kitchen. He looks at the shelves with their orderly arrangement of tools and bowls and containers. He looks at the flour sacks leaning against the wall, their cloth sides folded and tied. He looks at the wooden table, clean now, waiting for the next phase of work. He looks at the lamps with their steady flames, at the way the light pools and spreads, at the way the shadows gather in the corners. Everything is familiar. Everything is in its place. There is deep comfort in this familiarity, in this sense of order and continuity. This kitchen has been the same for years. The tools have not changed. The shelves hold the same items in the same arrangements. The oven occupies the same space, radiates the same warmth, requires the same care. Even the baker himself has not changed much. Older, perhaps, lines deepening in his face, gray appearing in his hair, but essentially the same person doing the same work in the same way. In a world where so much changes, where time moves forward relentlessly and nothing remains static, there is something deeply reassuring about this constancy, about this small space where the work continues unchanged, where the rituals remain the same, where the bread is made tonight exactly as it was made last night, and the night before, and countless nights stretching back through years. The baker's shoulders relax further. His breathing has slowed, deepened, falling into the easy rhythm of rest. His hands lie still on his knees, flour still dusting his fingers, his palms. His face is calm, peaceful, showing neither worry nor hurry. He is a man at ease with his work, with his place, with the slow unfolding of the night's tasks. More time passes. It is impossible to say how much, 10 minutes, 20, perhaps more. Time here does not divide itself into neat segments. It simply flows, continuous and unhurried, marked only by the gradual accumulation of warmth from the oven, by the imperceptible rising of the dough, by the slow burning down of the wood in the fire. Eventually the baker stirs, not because of any alarm or schedule, but because his body tells him it is time. He has learned to trust this internal sense of timing, this intuition built from years of working through the quiet hours. He rises from the stool with a soft sound, his joints releasing their stiffness, and moves to the oven. The fire has burned down slightly. The flames are lower, the wood consumed. More fuel is needed. The baker adds several pieces of wood to the fire, placing them carefully, ensuring good airflow. The flames reach up to embrace the new wood, crackling with renewed energy. The temperature will rise again now, the heat will build further. The oven's work continues. He closes the iron door again, leaving just the small gap for air. Then he turns and moves to the shelf where the dough rests. He stands before it for a moment, his hand reaching out, but not yet lifting the cloth. He is listening to something only he can hear, or perhaps feeling something only he can feel, some subtle sense of readiness, of progress, of time having passed sufficiently. His hand lifts the cloth. The dough has changed. It is larger, noticeably so. What was a compact, rounded mass has expanded, pushing upward, filling more of the bowl. The surface is smooth and slightly domed, showing the gentle pressure of the gas trap beneath. When the lamplight catches it at the right angle, the surface seems almost to glow, stretched and taut and alive with potential. The baker smiles very slightly. It is a small expression, barely visible, just a subtle softening around his eyes, a slight curve at the corners of his mouth. But it speaks of satisfaction, of things progressing as they should, of work done well and time passing in its proper rhythm. He does not touch the dough or disturb it. He simply observes, noting its size, its surface tension, its readiness, or not yet readiness, for the next stage. Then gently he replaces the cloth, tucking it around the bowl's edges again, returning the dough to its warm, protected darkness. Not yet, but soon. The baker returns to his stool and sits once more. The waiting continues. The baker sits in the warmth of the kitchen, surrounded by lamplight and the gentle sounds of the fire. There is no restlessness in his stillness. No sense of waiting for something to be over, so that the next thing can begin. He exists fully in this moment, in this particular quality of time that belongs only to the deep night, when the world is suspended between yesterday and tomorrow, when nothing moves in the streets outside, when even the air seems to hold its breath. His gaze drifts to one of the windows. The glass is thick and old, slightly wavy, holding imperfections that catch and refract the lamplight in gentle patterns. Through it, he can see nothing but darkness, the deep, complete darkness of the hour before dawn, when even the stars seem dimmed, when the moon has set or is hidden behind clouds, when the sky itself is a vast emptiness overhead. But the darkness does not feel oppressive or heavy. It feels natural, appropriate, like a blanket pulled up on a cold night. The darkness outside makes the warmth and light inside feel even more precious, more welcoming. The bakery becomes a small island of warmth and purpose in an ocean of sleeping silence. The baker's thoughts drift, unhurried and soft. He thinks of nothing in particular, or perhaps everything in small, fragmentary ways. A memory surfaces of learning this work years ago, of hands other than his own showing him how to knead, how to judge the dough's readiness, how to feed the fire. The memory is not sharp or detailed but soft and gentle, more feeling than image, more impression than fact. It drifts through his mind and dissolves like morning mist. Another thought arrives, equally gentle. The bread that will be baked tonight, later, when the dough has risen fully and the oven is ready, will be eaten tomorrow by people he knows and people he doesn't. It will be sliced at breakfast tables, spread with butter or jam, torn to dip in soup. It will nourish bodies and provide comfort and fill homes with its warm, yeasty scent. This thought pleases him in a quiet way. The bread he makes connects him to the community, makes him part of the daily lives of others, though he works alone in the night and never sees those who benefit from his labor. The thoughts drift on, unhurried, requiring no response or action. The fire crackles softly, sending a small shower of sparks up into the oven's interior. The heat continues to build, steady and patient. The bricks are growing warmer, degree by degree, absorbing the fire's energy and holding it, storing it for later use. If the baker were to place his hand on the oven's exterior now, not near the mouth but farther back where the bricks are thicker, he would feel warmth, genuine warmth, whereas hours ago those same bricks were cool to the touch. Everything is progressing as it should. Time continues to pass in its unmarked way. The baker remains on his stool, occasionally shifting his weight, occasionally flexing his hands, but mostly still, mostly quiet, mostly present in the gentle now of the kitchen's warmth and light. Eventually, perhaps 20 minutes later, perhaps 30, he rises again. His movements are slow and fluid, without the stiffness that might affect someone who had been sitting uncomfortably. He stretches slightly, rolling his shoulders, extending his arms, feeling his spine lengthen. These small movements are unconscious, automatic, the body taking care of itself. He moves to the oven and tends the fire once more. The door is opened wider, allowing him to see inside. The wood is burned down again, reduced to glowing coals and chunks of charred wood that hold their shape, but are consumed from within, pulsing with orange heat. The baker uses an iron poker to redistribute the coals, spreading them more evenly across the oven's floor, ensuring that the heat will be distributed uniformly when the time comes to bake. More wood is added. Larger pieces now, substantial logs that will burn for a longer time, that will maintain the fire through the next hours without requiring constant attention. The logs are placed with care, positioned to allow air to circulate, to ensure complete combustion. The fire responds eagerly, flames rising to engulf the new fuel, light increasing, heat intensifying. The baker steps back, feeling the warmth on his face, stronger now than before. The oven is well on its way to being ready. Not there yet, the bricks need more time, more heat, more patient accumulation, but progressing steadily toward that state of perfect readiness when everything is exactly as it should be for baking. He closes the door again and turns his attention once more to the dough. The cloth is lifted carefully, and what lies beneath has changed further. The dough has grown considerably now. It has more than doubled in size, filling the bowl, rising in a smooth dome that speaks of vigorous fermentation, of yeast working enthusiastically in the warm environment. The surface is taut and slightly shiny, stretched over the gas-filled interior. The baker extends one finger and gently presses it into the dough's surface. His touch is light, careful, making an indentation about half an inch deep. He withdraws his finger and watches. The indentation remains for a moment, a small dimple in the smooth surface. Then, very slowly, it begins to fill in as the dough springs back, the gluten structure pushing the surface back towards smoothness. But it doesn't spring back completely. The indentation remains visible, a shallow depression that shows the dough has relaxed sufficiently, has fermented enough, has reached the state where it is ready for the next stage of work. The baker nods to himself, a small gesture of acknowledgement and satisfaction. It is time. He carries the bowl to the central table and sets it down with care. The dough within shifts slightly with the movement, settling in its bowl, alive and responsive. The baker reaches into the bowl with both hands and gently lifts the dough out, feeling its weight, its softness, the slight resistance of its structure. The dough is placed on the floured table surface. It spreads slightly under its own weight, relaxing into a flattened round shape. The surface shows the smooth, satiny texture that comes from proper fermentation. When the lamplight catches it, the dough seems almost to glow from within, pale and luminous. The baker's hands rest on the dough for a moment, feeling its temperature, its texture, its readiness. Then he begins the process of shaping. This is gentle work, not forceful. The dough has spent the last hours developing flavor and structure through fermentation, and that work must be respected. Too much handling, too much pressure, would undo what has been built, would press out the precious gas that has accumulated, would compromise the final texture of the bread. So the baker works with soft hands and minimal movements. He presses the dough gently with his palms, flattening it into a rough rectangle. Then he folds one edge toward the center and presses lightly to seal it. He folds the opposite edge over the first and presses again. The dough is turned 90 degrees, and the process is repeated: fold, press, fold, press. These simple actions redistribute the gas bubbles, strengthen the gluten structure just slightly, and begin to give the dough a unified shape. After several such folds, the dough is formed into a rough round. The baker's hands move around the dough circumference, tucking and tightening, creating tension on the surface. This tension is important. It will help the dough maintain its shape as it rises and bakes, will contribute to the way the bread expands in the oven. His movements are practiced and sure, hands moving in a pattern worn smooth by countless repetitions. When the shape satisfies him, he divides the dough. A long knife is retrieved from a hook on the wall. Its blade is clean and sharp, kept that way through regular attention. The baker positions the knife above the dough and presses down in one smooth motion, cutting the mass in half. Then each half is cut in half again. And again. The cuts are decisive but not hurried, the blade passing through the soft dough with minimal resistance. Soon there are many pieces, each roughly equal in size. The baker works methodically now, taking each piece and shaping it individually. His hands cup around each portion of dough, his palms and fingers working in coordination to create smooth, round shapes. The motion is quick and efficient. A few movements and each piece becomes a neat ball, its surface taut, its shape uniform. Each shaped piece is placed on a wooden board that has been dusted with flour. The rounds are arranged in neat rows, not touching each other, each one given space to exist separately. They sit on the board like small, pale sculptures, catching the lamplight, their surfaces smooth and perfect. There is something deeply satisfying about seeing them arranged this way. The order, the uniformity, the promise of what they will become. When all the pieces are shaped and arranged, the baker covers them with a clean cloth. The cloth drapes over the rounds, creating a protected space where they can rest and recover from the shaping. Even gentle handling has compressed the dough slightly, has pressed out some of the gas, has stressed the gluten structure. Now the dough needs time to relax again, to proof, as bakers say, before it goes into the oven. This proofing will not take as long as the first rise, but it is no less important. The baker places the board on a shelf, not too close to the oven, but close enough to benefit from the warmth. The temperature here is perfect for proofing, warm but not hot, encouraging but not aggressive. Here, the yeast will continue its work at a measured pace, the dough will continue to expand gently, and the final transformation will begin. The baker returns to the central table and begins to clean once more. Bits of dough that have stuck to the table surface are scraped up with a metal scraper, its edge worn and flexible from years of use. The flour is brushed into a pile and returned to the storage sack. The table is wiped clean with a damp cloth, its surface restored to smooth cleanliness. The knife is washed and dried and returned to its hook. The bowl that held the rising dough is taken to the basin and cleaned, then set aside. The wooden board that held the dough during division is brushed clean and leaned against the wall. Each of these small tasks is performed with the same calm attention as the larger work of mixing and kneading and shaping. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is done carelessly. The tools and surfaces are treated with respect, maintained properly, kept clean and ready for the next use. When the cleaning is done, the baker pauses again. He stands in the center of the kitchen, hands resting loosely at his sides, and surveys the space. Everything is in order. The fire burns steadily in the oven. The shaped dough rests quietly beneath its cloth. The lamps continue their gentle illumination. The kitchen exists in a state of peaceful industry, work being done, but done with such calm and quiet that the atmosphere remains restful, meditative. The baker moves to a small cupboard near the door and retrieves a tin cup and a pitcher of water. The water is cool, fresh, poured into the cup with a soft gurgling sound. He drinks slowly, feeling the coolness travel down his throat, feeling his body accept and absorb the moisture. The work, though not strenuous, has warmed him, and the water is welcome. He drinks a second cup, then a third, then sets the cup aside and returns the pitcher to the cupboard. These small acts of self-care are woven into the rhythm of the night's work. The baker knows his own needs, knows when to rest, when to drink, when to step outside for a moment of cool air, when to simply stand and breathe and allow his body to recover before continuing. This awareness is part of what allows him to work through the night without exhaustion, without strain. He does not push himself beyond his capacity. He moves with his body's natural rhythms, honoring its needs, working in partnership with it rather than in opposition. He moves to the window and looks out. The darkness is still complete. No hint of dawn yet touches the eastern sky. The street beyond the window is empty and silent, the cobblestones barely visible in the faint spill of light from the bakery. The buildings across the way are dark shapes against the slightly less dark sky, their windows shuttered, their doors closed. The town sleeps on. How many people lie in their beds at this moment, the baker wonders, not with any urgency or need to know, but with gentle curiosity. How many are deep in dreams? How many are restless? How many sleep peacefully beside loved ones? How many are alone? The town contains hundreds of individual lives, hundreds of stories, hundreds of private worlds of thought and feeling and experience. And here he stands, awake and working while they sleep, preparing the bread that many of them will eat when they wake, connected to them through this simple but essential work. The thought is neither proud nor humble. It simply is. A recognition of connection, of purpose, of his small place in the larger pattern of the community's life. He turns away from the window and moves back to the oven. The heat radiating from it is stronger now, more intense. When he opens the door to check the fire, a wave of warmth washes over him, carrying the scent of burning wood and heated brick. The fire is burning well, the flames dancing across the logs, the coals glowing bright orange beneath. The interior of the oven is illuminated by this firelight, the brick walls glowing, the floor covered with coals and ash and burning wood. But the oven is still not ready. Not quite. The baker can tell by the quality of the heat, by the way the bricks look, by something in the air itself that speaks to his experienced senses. More time is needed. Perhaps another hour, perhaps less. The bricks must be saturated with heat, must be glowing with stored energy, must be ready to maintain a high, steady temperature even after the fire is raked out and the bread is placed inside. This is the nature of a traditional bread oven. It is heated with fire, but it is baked with stored heat. The fire itself is removed before the bread goes in. What remains is the tremendous heat held within the bricks, radiating from all sides, surrounding the bread with even, penetrating warmth that bakes from every direction at once. But that stage is still ahead. For now, the fire continues to burn, the heat continues to build, and the baker continues to tend and wait. He adds more wood, smaller pieces this time, to maintain the fire without raising the temperature too quickly. The oven's temperature must rise steadily, gradually, allowing the bricks time to absorb the heat thoroughly. Quick, intense fire would heat the surface of the bricks but not penetrate deeply. Slow, steady burning allows the heat to soak through, to reach the innermost parts of the brick mass, to create the reserve of stored energy that will be needed for baking. The door is closed again, and the baker steps back. His face is flushed from the heat, small beads of perspiration forming at his hairline. The kitchen has grown warmer over the hours, not uncomfortably so, but noticeably. The coolness of the early night has been pushed back, replaced by the steady warmth radiating from the oven. This warmth fills the room, softening the air, creating an atmosphere that is enveloping and comforting. The baker removes his apron and hangs it on a hook. Beneath it, his shirt is damp with perspiration at the back and under the arms. He rolls his sleeves higher on his forearms, exposing more skin to the air. These small adjustments help him stay comfortable as the temperature continues to rise. He moves to check the proofing dough. The cloth is lifted carefully, and the rounds beneath have changed. They have grown larger, puffed up with gas, their surfaces smooth and rounded. When the baker presses one gently with his fingertip, the dough yields softly, the indentation filling back in slowly but completely. They are proofing well, developing at the right pace, becoming ready for the oven. But they are not ready yet. Like the oven itself, they need more time. The baker replaces the cloth gently and returns to his stool. The waiting continues, patient and unrushed. The baker sits once more, his body settling into the familiar contours of the stool. The kitchen around him has found its rhythm now, its steady state of warmth and quiet activity. The fire burns in the oven with patient consistency. The dough rests beneath its cloth, expanding imperceptibly with each passing moment. The lamps continue their gentle illumination, their flames steady and vertical in the still air. Everything is proceeding as it should, each element of the work unfolding in its proper time, nothing rushed, nothing forced. The baker's hands rest on his thighs, palms down, fingers relaxed. There is flour still dusting his knuckles, caught in the creases of his skin, and dough still tucked beneath his fingernails despite the washing. These are the permanent marks of his trade, the signs that never quite disappear no matter how thoroughly he cleans. His hands are the hands of someone who works with them, who shapes and creates and tends. They are strong but not rough, capable but not harsh. They know their work in a way that goes beyond conscious thought, in a way that lives in muscle and bone and nerve. He flexes his fingers slowly, watching them move, feeling the small pops and releases as joints adjust. The work of kneading, repeated night after night, year after year, has shaped these hands, has given them their particular strength and flexibility. They are different hands than they were when he first began this work, years ago when he was younger and less certain. They have been trained by repetition, refined by experience, made into instruments perfectly suited to their purpose. The thought drifts through his mind and dissolves. His gaze moves to the window again. Still darkness. Still the deep, complete absence of light that characterizes the hours long past midnight, but not yet approaching dawn. The sky, what little of it is visible through the narrow window, shows no stars tonight. They are hidden behind clouds, or perhaps the angle is wrong, or perhaps his eyes, adjusted to the lamplight inside, simply cannot perceive their faint light. But the darkness does not feel eternal. The baker knows, with the certainty born of having lived through thousands of such nights, that dawn will come. It always comes. The darkness is deep now, yes, but it is the darkness that precedes light, not the darkness that follows it. Somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, time is moving forward, carrying the sun with it, bringing it slowly closer to the moment when it will break over the edge of the world and spill light across the land. But that moment is still far off. Hours yet. The baker's thoughts turn inward, becoming softer, less defined. He exists in a state that is neither fully alert nor close to sleep, a middle ground where the mind rests but remains aware, where thoughts drift like clouds but the body stays present and ready. This is a state he has learned to inhabit during the waiting periods of the night's work, when there is nothing to do but tend the fire occasionally and monitor the progress of the dough. It is a restful state, restorative in its own way, allowing him to work through the night without the exhaustion that would come from maintaining full, sharp awareness for hours on end. The fire crackles and pops, sending a brief shower of sparks upward. The sound draws the baker's attention gently back to the present moment. He looks at the oven, at the faint glow of firelight visible around the edges of the nearly closed door, at the heat shimmer in the air above it. The oven is like a living thing in its own way, breathing in air through the gap in the door, exhaling heat and light and the scent of burning wood. It must be tended, fed, monitored, but not controlled. The baker works in partnership with the oven, understanding its nature, responding to its needs, but not trying to force it to behave other than it does. This partnership extends to the dough as well. The yeast is alive, truly alive, and it works according to its own nature. The baker can create conditions that encourage it, can provide warmth and time and the proper environment, but he cannot command it. He can only observe and respond, adjusting as needed, trusting the process to unfold as it has unfolded countless times before. There is wisdom in this, the baker thinks, or rather, the thought passes through him without quite being formulated into words. The wisdom of working with rather than against. The wisdom of patience. The wisdom of trust in processes larger and older than oneself. Minutes pass in gentle silence. The baker's breathing has slowed and deepened. His shoulders are relaxed, sloping naturally, carrying no tension. His face is peaceful, showing neither concern nor anticipation. He simply exists in the moment, in the warmth of the kitchen, in the soft pool of lamplight, in the quiet company of fire and rising dough. Eventually, without any sense of decision or effort, he rises from the stool. His body knows when it is time to move, when stillness has lasted long enough, when some small task requires attention. He moves to the oven and opens the door slightly wider, peering inside to check the fire. The logs have burned down somewhat, but there is still substantial fuel remaining, still flames dancing and coals glowing. The temperature is good. The heat is building as it should. He closes the door and moves to check the dough. The cloth is lifted once more, carefully, without disturbing the air too much. The rounds of dough beneath have continued to grow. They are noticeably larger now, puffed and soft, their surfaces taut and smooth. The baker examines them with a practiced eye, noting their size, their shape, the way they sit on the floured board. He reaches out and gently touches one with his fingertip, pressing very lightly into the surface. The dough yields under his touch, soft and pillowy. When he removes his finger, the indentation remains for a long moment before slowly, very slowly, beginning to fill in. The dough is nearly ready. Not quite, it needs just a bit more time, another period of rest and rising, but it is close. Perhaps 15 more minutes. Perhaps 20. The baker nods to himself and replaces the cloth. He stands for a moment, hands resting on the edge of the shelf, looking at the covered board. There is a particular satisfaction in this stage of the work, when the dough has been shaped and is rising toward its final form, when the oven is heating toward readiness, when all the elements are coming together, converging toward that moment when bread will actually be made. The satisfaction is quiet, internal, not requiring expression or acknowledgement. It simply is, a small warmth in his chest, a sense of things proceeding well. The baker moves to the basin and washes his hands. The water is cool against his skin, refreshing after the warmth of the oven. He scrubs his palms and fingers, working soap into the flour-dusted creases, rinsing thoroughly. The water in the basin grows cloudy with flour, turning a pale, milky color. He dries his hands on a clean towel, feeling the rough texture of the woven fabric, then hangs the towel back on its hook. His movements remain unhurried, deliberate. Each action is complete in itself, given full attention before the next action begins. There is no sense of doing one thing while thinking about the next, no mental rushing ahead while the body lags behind. Everything happens in its proper sequence, in its proper time. The baker walks slowly around the kitchen, a circuit with no particular purpose except to move, to keep his body from becoming too stiff, to maintain the easy flow of energy that sustained movement provides. He passes the shelves with their neat arrangements of tools and bowls. He passes the flour sacks leaning against the wall. He passes the central table, clean and ready. He passes the window with its view of continued darkness. His footsteps are soft on the wooden floor, barely making sound. The boards know his tread, have been shaped by it over years, have worn smooth in the paths he walks most frequently. There are slight depressions in the floor where he stands most often, in front of the oven, at the central table near the basin. These depressions are subtle, barely visible, but they are there, permanent marks of his presence, of his work, of the countless hours he has spent in this room doing this work. He completes his circuit and returns to the oven. It is time to add more wood, the last major addition before the final heating phase. He selects several large pieces from the wood pile, good, solid logs that will burn long and hot, that will bring the oven to its final temperature. These are placed carefully in the oven's mouth, arranged to allow maximum air circulation, positioned to burn efficiently and completely. The fire responds enthusiastically, flames rising to engulf the new fuel, light and heat increasing noticeably. The baker can feel the intensity of the heat on his face, can see the flames dancing higher, can hear the crackling and snapping as the dry wood catches and begins to burn. He steps back, allowing the fire room to breathe, to do its work. The temperature in the kitchen rises another degree, then another. The warmth that was comfortable becomes slightly less so, tipping toward the edge of hot. But this is expected, anticipated, part of the natural progression of the night's work. Later, when the bread is baking and the work is nearly done, the heat will be even more intense. But by then, the end will be in sight, and the discomfort will be temporary and acceptable. The baker closes the oven door most of the way, and turns back to the kitchen. Everything is bathed in the warm glow of lamplight, but now there is an additional quality to the light, a faint, flickering glow from the oven that adds dancing shadows and moving highlights to the steady illumination of the lamps. The combination creates an atmosphere that is deeply warm, almost dreamlike, a space that feels removed from the ordinary world, existing in its own pocket of time and purpose. The baker retrieves a long wooden peel from where it leans against the wall. The peel is essentially a large, flat paddle with a long handle, used for moving bread in and out of the oven. Its surface is worn smooth by use, darkened by decades of contact with dough and flour and heat. The handle is comfortable in his grip, shaped by years of being held, the wood polished by his palms. He carries it to the central table and lays it flat, then dusts its surface generously with flour. This flour serves an important purpose. It will keep the dough from sticking to the peel, will allow the shaped loaves to slide easily from the peel onto the oven floor when the time comes to bake. The baker spreads the flour evenly across the peel's surface with his hand, ensuring complete coverage, paying particular attention to the edges where sticking is most likely to occur. When the peel is prepared, he sets it aside and returns his attention to the proofing dough. The cloth is lifted once more, and this time, the dough is ready. The baker can see it immediately. The rounds have grown to perhaps half again their shaped size, maybe more. They are full and soft, their surfaces smooth and slightly domed, showing all the signs of proper proofing. When he presses one gently with his finger, the indentation barely springs back at all, remaining as a shallow depression. This is perfect. This is exactly what he was waiting for. The dough is poised at that precise moment when it is fully proofed but not overproofed, when the yeast has done its work but the gluten structure still has enough strength to support the bread during baking. Timing is everything now. If the dough is put into the oven too soon, before it has proofed sufficiently, the bread will be dense and heavy, the texture close and compact rather than open and airy. If the dough is left too long and becomes overproofed, it will collapse in the oven, unable to support itself, resulting in flat, misshapen loaves. But at this precise moment, everything is in balance. The dough is ready, and soon, very soon, the oven will be ready as well. The baker carries the peel to the board where the dough rests. With gentle hands, he lifts one of the rounds from the board. The dough is soft and delicate in his grip, full of gas, fragile in its own way. He places it carefully on the floured surface of the peel, settling it near the far end. Then another round is placed beside the first, and another, arranging them with space between each one, ensuring they will not touch and stick together during baking. The peel now holds several rounds of dough, pale and perfect, ready for the oven. But the oven is not quite ready yet. The baker sets the loaded peel aside, positioned carefully so it will not tip or shift, and returns his attention to the fire. This is the crucial stage of oven preparation, the final push to achieve the proper temperature. The fire must be built up one last time, must be allowed to burn at its hottest for a period, transferring maximum heat into the bricks. He opens the oven door fully and uses the iron poker to stir the fire, breaking up the coals, exposing fresh wood to air, encouraging maximum combustion. The flames leap higher, burning with intense heat, the interior of the oven glowing bright with firelight. The heat that washes out is almost overwhelming, fierce and penetrating, carrying the sharp scent of burning wood and superheated brick. The baker's face is flushed, perspiration beading on his forehead, but he does not step back. He watches the fire carefully, monitoring its behavior, ensuring it burns as hot as possible. This final heating will push the oven to the temperature needed for baking bread, a temperature high enough to create rapid oven spring, to form a good crust, to bake the interior thoroughly while keeping it moist and tender. Minutes pass while the fire burns at its peak. The logs are consumed rapidly now, the intense heat devouring them, reducing them to glowing coals and ash. The bricks around the fire glow with absorbed heat, their surface taking on a subtle luminescence that speaks of tremendous stored energy. The air inside the oven shimmers and waves, distorted by the extreme temperature. The baker watches and waits, allowing the process to complete itself. Finally, when his experienced eye tells him the moment is right, he begins to rake out the fire. The baker retrieves a long-handled iron rake from its place against the wall. The rake is a simple tool, a wooden handle worn smooth by years of gripping, fitted with an iron head that extends in a flat blade with a hooked end. It is heavy in his hands, substantial, designed to withstand the heat of the oven without burning or warping. He holds it firmly, feeling its weight, its balance, preparing himself for the work ahead. He positions himself before the open oven door. The heat radiating from within is intense, almost shocking in its power. It presses against his face and chest like a physical force, making his skin prickle and flush, making the air in his lungs feel warm and dry. But he does not hesitate or pull back. This heat is necessary. This heat is what will bake the bread. This heat is the culmination of hours of patient fire tending, of wood carefully added and burned, of temperature gradually built and stored in the massive brick structure. The baker extends the rake into the oven. Its iron head enters the fierce heat, pushing into the glowing interior where coals and ash and remnants of burning would cover the floor. He pulls the rake back toward himself, dragging it across the oven floor, and coals begin to tumble out, spilling onto the brick apron in front of the oven. They glow bright orange and red, pulsing with heat, releasing small wisps of smoke as they settle. Again and again, the baker extends the rake and pulls it back, each time bringing out more coals, more ash, more debris. The coals are pushed to the side, away from the oven's mouth, gathered in a glowing pile that will be dealt with later. For now, the important thing is to clear the oven floor, to make room for the bread, to remove everything that might interfere with the baking. The work is hot and demanding. Sweat runs down the baker's face now, trickling from his temples, gathering at his brow. His shirt is damp across his chest and back. The heat from the oven is overwhelming at this proximity, and the heat from the pile of coals beside him adds to it, surrounding him with fierce warmth. But his movements remain steady and controlled, the rake moving in and out with practiced rhythm, his body knowing exactly what to do despite the discomfort. Gradually, the oven floor is cleared. What was covered with fire and coals and ash is now mostly clean, swept toward the back and sides where the debris can remain without interfering. The floor itself, made of firebrick laid in a smooth, level surface, glows with heat. It is so hot that the air above it shimmers and waves, so hot that if water were dropped onto it, it would hiss and evaporate instantly, so hot that the brick itself seems to emit a faint, reddish glow. The baker steps back, the rake lowering. He takes a moment to breathe, to let his arms rest, to wipe his forehead with the back of his hand. The heat has been absorbed not just by the oven but by his own body, and he can feel it radiating from his skin, can feel his heart beating a bit faster from the exertion and the warmth. But there is satisfaction in the feeling too, the satisfaction of hard work done well, of a crucial task completed properly. He sets the rake aside and retrieves a mop. This is not an ordinary mop, but one designed specifically for the oven, a long handle fitted with a cloth head that can be dampened with water. The baker takes the mop to the basin and dips the cloth head in water, soaking it thoroughly. Water drips from the cloth as he carries it back to the oven, leaving a trail of dark spots on the floor. He extends the wet mop into the oven. The cloth head touches the glowing hot bricks, and instantly there is a violent hiss, a cloud of steam rising rapidly, filling the oven's interior with white vapor. The water in the cloth is vaporizing on contact with the superheated surface, creating a brief but intense burst of steam that helps clean the oven floor, removing any remaining ash or debris, ensuring a clean surface for the bread. The baker moves the mop across the oven floor in broad strokes, systematic and thorough. Each pass produces another hiss, another cloud of steam. The steam billows out of the oven's mouth, warm and damp against his face, carrying with it any lingering smoke or particles. The cloth on the mop head darkens with ash, turning gray and then black as it wipes across the bricks. When the entire floor has been mopped, the baker withdraws the mop and inspects his work. The oven floor is clean now, the bricks still glowing with heat but free of debris, ready to receive the bread. The walls and ceiling of the oven glow as well, radiating the stored heat that has been building for hours. The temperature inside is perfect, hot enough to create the rapid expansion and crust formation that makes good bread, but not so hot that the bread will burn before the interior is properly baked. Everything is ready. The baker sets the mop aside and turns to the peel loaded with risen dough. He lifts it carefully, feeling its weight, feeling the soft mass of the dough resting on the floured surface. The dough rounds look even more beautiful now in the warm light, pale and perfect, their surfaces smooth, their shapes gently rounded. They are the culmination of hours of work, of careful mixing and patient fermentation and gentle shaping. And now, finally, they are ready to become bread. The baker positions himself before the oven, the peel held steady in his hands. He slides the peel forward, extending it into the oven's mouth, pushing it across the hot floor toward the back. When the peel is fully extended, when the dough rounds are positioned where he wants them, he performs a practiced motion, a quick, sharp jerk backward that slides the dough off the peel and onto the oven floor while leaving the peel itself in his hands. The dough rounds land softly on the hot bricks. For a moment, they simply sit there, pale shapes against the glowing floor. Then almost immediately the heat begins to affect them. The bottoms of the rounds, in direct contact with the superheated brick, begin to set. The moisture in the dough begins to turn to steam. And the yeast, encountering the intense heat, goes through a final burst of activity, producing a last surge of carbon dioxide before the heat kills it. This final fermentation, combined with the rapid expansion of steam, creates what bakers call oven spring, the dramatic rise that happens in the first few minutes of baking. The baker watches as the rounds begin to expand, puffing up, growing taller and wider, transforming from dense, compact shapes into something more open and airy. It is always remarkable to watch, even after years of seeing it happen. The transformation is so rapid, so dramatic, so visible. One moment the dough is sitting on the oven floor, looking much as it did on the peel. The next moment it is expanding, rising, becoming something new. The surfaces begin to firm as the heat sets the gluten structure. The color begins to change, moving from pale to cream to the first hints of gold. The baker withdraws the peel and immediately returns to the board where the remaining dough waits. More rounds are transferred to the peel, arranged with care, readied for the oven. The peel is extended into the oven once more, and another batch of dough is deposited on the hot floor. And again, and again. The baker works with efficient calm, moving between the board and the oven, each trip adding more bread to the baking chamber, until all the shaped dough has been transferred. The oven is now full of baking bread. The baker steps back and closes the oven door, sealing the heat inside, containing the environment where the transformation will complete itself. The door fits snugly, its iron frame meeting the brick opening with practiced precision, its weight settling with a solid sound that speaks of proper construction and careful maintenance. For a moment, the baker simply stands there, looking at the closed door, his hands resting at his sides. The work is not finished. He will need to check the bread, rotate it if necessary, remove it when it is done, but a major threshold has been crossed. The bread is baking. The long preparation has led to this moment. Everything that could be done has been done, and now the oven itself takes over, the stored heat radiating from all sides, the bread baking in an environment that is as close to perfect as human skill and patience can create. The baker moves to his stool and sits down heavily. The exertion of the last period, the fire raking, the mopping, the loading of the bread, has tired him more than the earlier work of mixing and kneading. He can feel it in his arms and shoulders, can feel the way his legs release with relief as he settles onto the stool. The heat has drained him as well, and now that he is no longer actively working in front of the oven, he becomes aware of how warm he is, how damp his shirt is with perspiration, how flushed his face feels. But there is deep satisfaction in the tiredness. It is the tiredness that comes from good work well done, from tasks completed properly, from effort expended in pursuit of something worthwhile. His body is tired, yes, but not depleted, not exhausted, simply tired in the way that feels right, that feels earned, that will be followed by good rest when the work is finally done. He sits quietly, letting his breathing slow, letting his heart rate settle, letting the warmth of the kitchen settle around him like a blanket. The lamps still burn steadily on their shelves, though their light seems less necessary now that the eastern windows are beginning, just barely beginning, to show the faintest change in the quality of the darkness outside. Not light yet, not even close to light, but something different from the complete darkness of the deep night. A subtle shift, a barely perceptible lessening, as if the darkness itself is beginning to think about letting go, beginning to prepare for the transition that must inevitably come. The baker's gaze rests on the window, watching this subtle change. He has seen it countless times, this moment when night begins its slow retreat, when the darkness that seemed eternal and absolute begins to reveal itself as temporary, as something that will pass. It happens so gradually that it is impossible to point to any single instant and say, "There, that is when it began." Instead, it is something that accumulates, moment by moment, imperceptibly, until suddenly one realizes that what was once pitch black is now merely very dark, that what once allowed no vision now permits the faintest suggestion of shapes. But dawn is still far off. An hour yet, perhaps more. The baker's thoughts drift again, softened by tiredness and warmth and the satisfaction of work progressing well. He thinks about the bread baking in the oven, about the changes happening inside it at this very moment. The starches are gelatinizing, absorbing moisture and swelling. The proteins are setting, forming the structure that will give the bread its texture. The sugars at the surface are caramelizing, combining with proteins in complex reactions that will create the rich, golden brown crust and the deep, complex flavors that make good bread so satisfying. All of this is happening now invisibly inside the closed oven. The transformation from dough to bread is well underway, an alchemy of heat and time and the ingredients he combined hours ago. He cannot see it happening, cannot watch the process, but he knows it is occurring with the certainty that comes from experience, from having done this thousands of times, from understanding the principles that govern the process. The baker closes his eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, he would never sleep while bread is baking, but simply to rest them, to give them a break from the lamplight and the brightness of the glowing oven. Behind his closed eyelids, he can still see the glow of the lamps, still sense the warmth of the kitchen, still remain present and aware even as he allows his body this small rest. Time passes in gentle quiet. The only sounds are the small, comfortable sounds of the bakery, the faint crackling from the pile of coals that have been raked from the oven, the soft hiss and pop of the lamps, the barely audible settling and creaking of the building itself, the whisper of the baker's own breathing. The bread bakes in patient silence. Eventually, the baker opens his eyes and rises from the stool. His body protests slightly. The brief rest has allowed his muscles to stiffen, to become aware of their tiredness, but he moves through it, stretching slightly, rolling his shoulders, bringing himself back to full awareness and readiness. It is time to check the bread. He moves to the oven and carefully opens the door, just a crack at first, allowing some of the intense heat to escape gradually rather than all at once. Then he opens it wider, and the interior of the oven is revealed. The bread has transformed beautifully. What entered the oven as pale, soft rounds of dough are now taking on the appearance of actual loaves. They have risen substantially, their surfaces beginning to brown, their shapes full and rounded. The kitchen fills with the scent of baking bread, a warm, yeasty, slightly sweet aroma that is perhaps the most welcoming and comforting scent in the world. The baker examines the loaves with a critical eye. Those nearest the back of the oven, where the heat is most intense, are browning faster than those near the front. This is normal, expected, but it means the loaves need to be rotated to ensure even baking. Using the long peel, he carefully slides it under the loaves at the back and brings them forward, then moves the lighter loaves from the front toward the back. It is delicate work. The loaves are fragile at this stage, not yet fully set, and rough handling could damage them, but his hands are practiced and sure. When all the loaves have been repositioned, he closes the oven door once more. They need more time. Perhaps 10 minutes, perhaps 15. He will check again soon, monitoring their progress, ensuring they bake to perfection. Golden brown on the outside, fully cooked through on the inside, with a crust that is crisp but not hard, and an interior that is tender and open. The baker returns to his stool, but he does not sit for long. There is a restlessness in him now, a subtle energy that makes stillness difficult. The work is nearly done. The bread is baking. Soon, very soon, it will be time to remove the loaves from the oven, to let them cool, to prepare the bakery for the day ahead. The night's work is approaching its conclusion, and his body knows this, is beginning to shift from the patient, meditative state of the long middle hours toward the more alert state needed for completion. He moves around the kitchen, tidying small things that don't truly need tidying, checking tools and surfaces that don't truly need checking. It is displacement activity, a way of occupying himself while the final minutes of baking tick past, but it is also part of the ritual, part of the closing sequence of the night's work. The eastern windows show a definite change now. The darkness is no longer complete. It has lightened to a deep, deep gray, the kind of darkness that is not truly darkness anymore, but the absence of light becoming gradually less absolute. No color yet, no visible details. But the quality has changed unmistakably, inevitably. Dawn is coming. The baker moves to the window and looks out, his hands resting on the sill. The street is still empty, still silent, but it is no longer invisible. He can make out the shapes of the buildings across the way now, can see the line of the cobblestones, can distinguish the deeper darkness of doorways and windows from the slightly lighter darkness of walls. The world is beginning to emerge from night, beginning to take form again. And in the bakery, the bread is nearly ready. The baker stands at the window, watching the gradual transformation of the darkness outside. It is a process so slow that it seems to be happening and not happening at the same time. If he stares at any single point, a window across the street, the corner where two buildings meet, the edge of the cobblestones, he can see no change. Everything appears static, fixed, unchanging. But if he looks away for a minute or two, and then looks back, the difference is undeniable. What was invisible is now visible. What was formless now has form. The darkness is retreating, not in a rush or a flood, but with the patient inevitability of tide. His breath makes a small fog on the cool glass of the window. The glass itself is still cold, holding the memory of the night's chill, though the air inside the bakery is warm, almost hot from the hours of the oven's burning. The contrast is pleasant somehow, the coolness of the window against his palms, the warmth of the room at his back. It speaks to the threshold nature of this moment, suspended between night and day, between the work of darkness and the approach of light. Behind him, the oven holds its heat with patient steadiness. The bread inside continues its final transformation, the minutes ticking past in silence, the crust darkening and crisping, the interior cooking through, the complex chemical changes completing themselves in the intense, even heat. The scent of baking bread has grown stronger, filling the entire bakery now, spilling out through the gaps around the doors and windows, beginning to drift into the street beyond. This scent is often the first announcement of morning. Even before light touches the streets, even before the first people emerge from their homes, the smell of fresh bread spreads through the neighborhood, warm and welcoming, a gentle alarm clock for the senses. People who are still in bed, hovering in that space between sleep and waking, will smell it and know that morning is coming, that the bakery is at work, that the day is beginning whether they are ready for it or not. The baker turns away from the window and moves back to the oven. It is time to check the bread again. He opens the door carefully, and the heat that billows out is still intense, though less fierce than it was when the bread first went in. The oven has cooled slightly during the baking. This is natural, inevitable, but it remains hot enough to complete the work, hot enough to finish what was started. The loaves have achieved a beautiful color. They are golden brown now, with patches of deeper brown where the crust has caramelized most intensely. The surfaces are no longer soft but firm, set, ready. When the baker reaches in with the peel and gently taps the bottom of one loaf, lifting it slightly to reach underneath, it sounds hollow, a sign that the interior has cooked through, that the moisture has been driven out or absorbed, that the structure has set completely. They are done. The baker works quickly now, sliding the peel under each loaf in turn and withdrawing them from the oven. The loaves are arranged on a large wooden rack near the central table, placed so air can circulate around them, so they can cool gradually and evenly. Steam rises from their surfaces, moisture escaping, the loaves releasing the water that was trapped inside during baking. One by one, the loaves emerge from the oven. Each is placed carefully on the cooling rack, positioned so it does not touch its neighbors, given space to breathe and settle. The baker handles them with respect, aware of their heat, aware of their fragility in these first minutes after baking, aware that rough treatment could damage the crust or compress the interior. When all the loaves have been removed, the oven is empty once more. The baker closes the door and steps back, looking at his work. The cooling rack is full of bread, perhaps 24 loaves, maybe more, all roughly the same size and shape, all golden and beautiful, all filling the air with their warm, inviting scent. This is what he has been working toward through all the hours of the night. This is the result of the mixing and kneading and rising and shaping and baking. This is the purpose that has guided every action, every decision, every moment of patience. The bread is made. The baker feels the satisfaction of completion settle over him like a warm cloak. It is not an exuberant feeling, not a surge of excitement or pride. It is quieter than that, deeper than that, a profound sense of rightness, of work done well, of purpose fulfilled. The bread exists now because of his labor, because of his knowledge and skill and patience. In a few hours, this bread will feed people, will nourish them, will bring comfort and satisfaction to their meals. And that connection, invisible but real, is the true reward of the work. He moves slowly around the cooling rack, examining each loaf. Some are slightly more golden than others. Some have risen a bit more or expanded in slightly different shapes. But all are good. All are sound. There are no failures here, no collapsed loaves or burnt crusts or underbaked interiors. The night's work has been successful from beginning to end. The baker allows himself a small smile. It is a subtle expression, barely visible, but it speaks of contentment, of satisfaction, of a job well done. His body is tired now, truly tired, in a way it wasn't earlier. The final burst of activity, the heat of the oven, the concentration required to remove the bread properly, all of these have drawn on reserves that were already depleted by the long night's work. He can feel the tiredness in his bones, in his muscles, in the way his eyelids want to be heavy, in the way his shoulders want to slump. But the work is not quite finished yet. There is still cleaning to do, still preparations to make for the day ahead, still the transition from the private work of night to the public work of day, when the bakery will open and customers will come. These final tasks are less demanding than what has come before, but they still require attention, still require care. The baker moves to the oven and opens the door wide, allowing the residual heat to escape into the kitchen. The pile of coals that was raked out earlier has cooled considerably now, no longer glowing bright orange but gray with ash, though still warm at their cores. These will need to be removed, cleaned up, the area around the oven swept and tidied. But that can wait a few minutes more. For now, he simply allows the oven to cool, to release the tremendous heat it has been holding, to begin its return to a resting state. The kitchen, already warm, grows warmer still with the addition of the escaping oven heat. But the baker doesn't mind. The day is coming, and with it will come warmth from the sun. The heat of the bakery will blend with the heat of the day, and people passing in the street will feel the warmth radiating from the open door and know that fresh bread is available, that the baker has been at work while they slept, that the day's bread is ready. The baker moves to the basin and washes his hands once more. The water is cool and refreshing against his skin, against his heat-flushed face when he splashes some across his forehead and cheeks. He dries himself with the towel, then removes his apron and hangs it on its hook. His shirt beneath is damp with sweat, clinging to his back and chest, but the coolness of the morning air, beginning now to seep in through the gaps around the doors and windows, helps to evaporate the moisture, to cool his skin. He rolls down his sleeves, fastening the cuffs, and runs his hands through his hair, pushing it back from his forehead. These small gestures of grooming are part of the transition, part of the preparation for the day ahead when he will interact with customers, when the private work of night gives way to the public work of day. The light outside has continued to change. The deep gray has lightened to a softer gray, the kind of gray that holds the promise of color, that suggests dawn is near even though the sun has not yet appeared. The buildings across the street are clearly visible now, their shapes distinct, their details beginning to emerge. Windows can be distinguished from walls. Doors can be seen. The texture of stone and brick can be made out. The world is returning. The baker moves to the front room of the bakery, passing through the doorway, ducking slightly beneath the low frame. This room is cooler than the kitchen, less affected by the oven's heat, and the change in temperature is refreshing. He moves to the windows that face the street and opens the shutters, swinging them back, allowing what little light there is to enter. The street outside is still empty, still quiet, but it is no longer the complete emptiness of the deep night. There is an expectancy to it now, a sense that people will emerge soon, that life will return to the lanes and squares, that the town will wake and begin its day. A few chimneys are beginning to show thin wisps of smoke, evidence that fires are being lit, that homes are beginning to warm, that morning routines are starting in houses throughout the neighborhood. The baker returns to the kitchen and begins the final cleaning. The central table is wiped down once more, ensuring it is perfectly clean, ready for the next night's work. The few bowls and tools that were used are washed and dried and returned to their places on the shelves. The floor is swept, the broom moving in long, rhythmic strokes, gathering flour and ash and small debris into a pile that is collected and disposed of. The pile of coals from the oven has cooled enough to handle now. Using a metal scoop, the baker transfers them to a bucket, working carefully to ensure no hot embers remain on the brick apron. When all the coals have been removed, the area around the oven is swept clean, the bricks restored to order. The bucket of ashes will be emptied later, added to a pile behind the bakery where they will eventually be mixed into the garden soil or given away to neighbors who want them for their own gardens. The baker works steadily, methodically, ensuring that everything is clean and in its place. The cooling rack with its load of bread is moved to the front room, positioned where it can be seen from the street, where the loaves can continue to cool, and where they will be easily accessible when customers begin to arrive. The bread has cooled considerably by now, no longer steaming, the crusts firm and crisp, the interiors set and stable. Each loaf is a small miracle, really. Flour and water and salt and yeast, combined with time and warmth and care, transformed into something nourishing and delicious, something that has sustained human life for thousands of years, something that connects the baker to an ancient lineage of people who have done this same work, who have fed their communities, who have turned simple ingredients into daily bread. The baker stands for a moment, looking at the bread arrayed on the rack. The light from the windows falls across the loaves now, no longer lamplight but the genuine light of early morning, still gray and soft but undeniably real, undeniably daylight. The loaves seem to glow in this light, their golden brown crusts catching and reflecting the dawn, their rounded shapes casting small shadows on the wooden rack. Beautiful, the baker thinks. They are beautiful, not in the way of art or decoration, but in the way of things that are well made, that fulfill their purpose perfectly, that embody care and skill and attention. The beauty of usefulness, the beauty of work done well. Behind him, the lamps in the kitchen still burn, but their light is no longer needed. The day has arrived, or is arriving, the darkness fully retreated now, the morning established. The baker moves through the kitchen, extinguishing the lamps one by one, pinching out the flames with dampened fingers, the small hiss of each extinguished flame marking the end of the night's work. When all the lamps are out, the kitchen is illuminated only by daylight, the soft, gray light of early morning entering through the windows, gentle and cool, so different from the warm, golden lamplight that filled the room through the dark hours. The change in light changes the character of the space, makes it feel more connected to the world outside, less separate and enclosed. The baker returns to the front room and unlocks the front door. The lock turns with a soft click, and he pulls the door open, allowing the morning air to enter. It is cool and fresh, carrying the scent of dew and earth and the distant hills, untouched yet by the warmth of the coming day. It flows into the bakery, mixing with the warm air and the scent of fresh bread, creating a welcome that anyone passing on the street will feel. The baker steps outside for a moment. The cobblestones are damp with dew, glistening slightly in the growing light. The air is cool against his face, refreshing after the hours of warmth in the bakery. He breathes deeply, filling his lungs with the morning air, feeling it clear his head, revive his tired body, mark the transition from the work of night to the rest of day. The sky above is no longer black or dark gray, but a soft, pale gray, the color of dove feathers, holding the promise of color soon to come. The horizon to the east, visible between the buildings at the end of the street, shows a faint lightening, a suggestion of brightness building just below the edge of the world. The sun is coming. It will crest the horizon soon, spilling light across the land, bringing warmth and color and the full awakening of the day. But for now, in these last minutes of the threshold time, the world exists in soft grayness, in gentle quiet, in the peaceful pause between night and day. The baker stands outside his bakery, looking at the street, at the buildings, at the lightening sky. He is tired. He is ready for rest. But there is contentment in his tiredness, satisfaction in his readiness for rest. The night's work has been completed successfully. The bread has been made. The day is beginning. And he has done his part, has fulfilled his role, has contributed his labor to the sustaining of the community. A door opens somewhere down the street. Footsteps sound on the cobblestones, the first person to emerge into the morning, the first sign that the town is waking, that life is returning to the streets. The baker watches as a figure appears, indistinct at this distance in the gray light, moving slowly, purposefully, beginning their own day's routine. Soon there will be others. Soon the street will fill with people going about their business, and the bakery will receive its customers, and the bread that was made in the night will be sold and carried away to homes throughout the neighborhood. But for this moment, there is only this, the cool morning air, the soft light, the quiet street, the tired baker standing in his doorway, the scent of fresh bread drifting out into the world. The baker takes one more deep breath of the morning air, then turns and steps back inside.